So welcome everyone to our continuation of this asset protection and what we're doing on this one on robust protection strategies. So with no further ado, let's get things underway. So all of this is continuing on in the series about being sovereign in your own land. And part of being sovereign, of course, is actually having your wealth completely protected from the greedy gold-digging scumbags who basically try to take you from where they haven't sown. That's one of my favorite little statements. So I'm presuming everyone can see the screen okay and can hear me nice and loud and clear. So in that assumption, I want to continue forward. So obviously, this is not meant to replace professional advice. It's all about self-education to help you master these basic principles. And then, of course, but for your individual circumstances, you've always got to get, specialist and professional advice, obviously, to really make sure it's relevant for you. So one person can't see the screen. I'm curious if everyone else can. Because if everyone else can, it just means there's a problem at your end with internet, Louise. So can everyone else see the screen okay? Yep, okay. Yep. Everyone else can? Okay, good. Okay. So this is the agenda in this training. So the introduction to being sovereign, robust asset protection strategies today, then creating income streams in a balanced portfolio, putting your sovereignty plan together, and a possible bonus week on 100% legal tax minimization. And all those is very important if you're going to be sovereign in your own land. Like you really do have to have all this stuff together. So week 4, we'll definitely be covering a little bit about off-grid strategies and little practical things to kind of come together with all the other stuff. So although it's mainly financially focused, we're also going to be bringing all that in because all these are important strategies. So a bit of a revision from last week, just very quickly for a couple of minutes. To be sovereign is a quality or state of being sovereign and basically being self-empowered and making your own choices in life. So that's what this is all about. So you taking authority over your own life and your own situation and living in a place of self-empowerment. So you become responsible for your life and your destiny. And it's the greatest feeling when you actually choose to do that. So being a sovereign, not a slave, it's all about the mindset. The biggest difference between the slave and the sovereign I shared last week was the sovereign always comes from a place of responsibility. The slave will rely on the system and expects everyone else to solve their problems. Sovereigns will see problems and take action to deal with them. They see community problems as their problem. They will deal with stuff from that higher place of self-empowerment. They rarely ever move into a blame cycle. They will generally make those decisions. They're not the kind of people who sit there whinging about government. They prefer to take real, tangible action. And that's the only way you're ever going to really get yourself into this 4% wealthy, or certainly the upper echelon of the 20% awake in this matrix. So most people, as you can see, there's about 70% of society really are by and large going to fall straight into it. In fact, 85%, because when you take the 15%, reality is 85% of people will generally go straight into it. And not surprisingly, 85% on Australia, from statistics I can see, 80-85% end up getting jabbed. So it's generally people who really do make their own sovereign choices who get ahead with everything. So I mentioned about the 3 pillars of actually being a sovereign individual, and that was basically having the sovereign mindset was very important, was one. That was the first thing, was to have a really genuine sovereign mindset. Number 2 was having sovereign income streams, which you could deal with. And number 3 was actually keeping the wealth that you make. So this today is very much about point number 3. It's keeping the wealth you make. And Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad, the cash flow quadrant, says if you want to be a sovereign person who's not in the left side of the quadrant, an employee dependent on the system, you have to have a strategy to keep the wealth you make. He said that's just as important. He says, and in fact, I don't know who's played the cash flow quadrant game, but one of the ways you can lose a game is by getting caught in a tax audit, a divorce, a lawsuit, something like that. So the sovereign is always about protecting their wealth as much as they are making it. And so not just from lawsuit creditors, but governments, of course, are the most greediest, generally, cartel-like groups for just simply although there was a place for governments in society, big, large, centralized governments that become dependent upon, people living it up at the expense of the people, well, literally, they can commit great evils, as we've seen. And there's no greater joy for many governments than just simply taking their citizens' money. And throughout centuries after centuries, they've done it. And the smart ones stay ahead of the game. And so this is the final one I shared that was really about being sovereign and what you would actually need. And that's one of the reasons of Global Wealth Club, why we try and cover all this. It's why we have the Awakening Within we work with to help mindset, emotional balance, teaching about alternate energies, income streams, all that kind of stuff, because all this is important in being sovereign. So now let's go and take a bit of a look at asset protection and what it means to have robust wealth protection. So all this is fair to say that, you've really got to understand that governments, by and large, are takers as a rule, and generally this whole idea of fair exchange. And one of the things the sovereign individuals said is that more and more people would realize the absolute absurdity of governments, and what they're actually up to, and things like that. So it's fair to say that right now we're living in very much this kind of feudal society, is how I like to put it here, where you've got everyone, basically the peasants working the land for the nobles, you've got things like that. And by and large, we've got this kind of system set up, and certainly in the Western world. And we're very much at the mercy of governments. And we're certainly seeing things that you probably thought you'd never see in your lifetime in the last few years. It's been extraordinary. Soon, I've been predicting for a while, I think you'll find it will become a lot more blatant. Governments will start targeting wealth as they start to hit problems. And generally, they've been doing it anyway. I was speaking to a client today who the tax office has been after them for something, and he said, God, they're the most unreasonable bunch of people, in terms of this particular debt that I've got. So very easy that when you bring in more mandates and laws and wealth confiscation, I've seen people get cars confiscated for the most absurd reasons. It really is. And you cannot really comprehend the horrors of what it's like to not be well protected as to when you hit what's called a life-altering event with someone trying to take a crack at your money and realizing that you really are at genuine risk of losing everything. Now, most people, it doesn't happen to them because they're just not big enough targets. But as you start to make more money and get bigger, you become a natural target. I remember literally having a client tell me, the first time I ever got sued, she openly told me with a little bit of embarrassment that she was suing me, even though she knew, but I clearly told her that family law advice, I didn't provide that. And she's suing me for not considering the family law implications of a tax strategy, even though I had a clear disclaimer. She just said to me when it was just she and I in a room for about a minute, she said, look, I'm really sorry. You're a nice guy and you did give me good advice. But she said, I'm hoping your insurance will have some money for me because my daughter's really sick. And she said in the family court, basically, I'm out of time on a family law lawsuit. And I just kind of said, yeah, wow, okay. I said, I'm sorry to hear that for you, but I think you're going to lose this because of my disclaimer. And she goes, yeah, I think so too. But that was the first lawsuit I ever got. She pretty much did it because she was concerned for her daughter and she saw me as a target as a lawyer, and she was hoping that there would be some technicality that she'd get her money. The second lawsuit I had was almost identical situation. A couple of guys who admitted to me I'd given them good advice, and the guy actually said, look, Warren, he goes, you're a lawyer, you know how to make money, you'll make it back. He said, I just want you to refund my money. He said, if you don't, I'll make your life difficult, I'll sue for a larger amount, and I'll go to legal practice board, I'll do whatever it takes to make your life hell. He openly told me that in a private meeting. I just said, you're an extraordinary. And he said, well, it's just the way the world works. I've lost 100 grand in investment. I've got it back from somewhere. And that was my first two lawsuits. And it taught me a very grim lesson about how the world really works, this kind of stuff. So no matter who you are and what you're doing, you are a genuine risk, and you've got not just lawsuits and you've got not just government issues, you've got the Great Reset. And believe you me, if the government turns up claiming you owe them 200 grand and it's ridiculous, but you've got to prove your innocence and you're not well protected, you're going to get a lot of sleepless nights. At least if you're well protected, you kind of sleep better at night. So that's the basic hallmark of being a sovereign individual. Sovereigns know that protecting their mindset and their way of thinking is really important, because otherwise it can keep you awake at night. And no doubt some of you, the whole idea of where this is going in Australia and the kind of great reset and this German sleeper building on the right is probably worrying some of you. At least it's in your back of your mind. And you're like, where's this all going to go for me? What's it going to lead for my future? And if you feel like that, just type a Y in the chat. Doesn't mean that you're living there in paranoia, but if it worries you a bit, just type a Y. Personally, if it doesn't, you're a pretty powerful individual. It certainly concerns me a little bit. I'm very mindful and I'm very much protective of my wealth. So Aidan, yeah, absolutely, and that's good, Aidan. It's good when you own it, and I find that many of the wealthiest people I've ever met, are generally the most paranoid when it comes to their assets, and that's why they keep their wealth. It's well known that Mr. Gates, as well as being a part-time doctor who likes to experiment on people, is actually a very paranoid individual when it comes to his wealth and his business. And that's one of the reasons that he weathered many storms that others didn't do, because he took preventative steps that others didn't take. Where Steve Jobs was known for being a bit more reckless. And that was why Apple originally had some problems. Governments have got so many laws around asset seizures, you cannot comprehend the absurdity of it. There is a huge absurdity right now of laws. If I listed them, for example, Hoon legislation, the ability to actually take your car off you. Like in WA, I remember finding out to my horror years ago when I was representing a client and I was a lawyer, that this client, basically what happened was his best friend wanted to borrow his car. His best friend went 35 Ks over the limit and was pulled over. And because under Hoon legislation, over 30 Ks, the car gets automatically seized and impounded for 28 days. And it doesn't matter even if it's not your car. So the owner was liable. Even though basically he wasn't driving the car, he had his car impounded and couldn't get it back for 28 days, and policeman said to me privately on the phone, it's the worst law I've ever seen in my life. But unfortunately, there's not much we can do about it. So these kind of things are happening more and more and more and more. And then even seizing properties and selling them just because there was cannabis grown. And even though you might not have any idea that your kid was growing cannabis. So there's many reasons you can lose your wealth. And I expect to see more and more of this, like you see restrictions on moving wealth, especially if we start moving towards any kind of social credit kind of way of being in society, or if we start passing more stricter like laws or, protesting or any further mandates and stuff like that. So look, in the best case scenario, none of this happens. The smart people assume that the worst can happen. And to be sovereign in your own land, you want to be well protected in your own land. You want to be, as I tell people, you want to be the Porsche driver who's got the best alarm system, because if you've got a car in the car park, which is the best alarm system, and there's someone looking to steal a car, you also be the last one they'll try and grab. They'll be going after other cars in the car lot. They won't be bothered with your one because it's well covered. And believe you me, 99% of lawsuits, I can tell you as a former lawyer, is about strategy. And generally most of the time, I would actually have people coming to see me and they go about the legalities. I'd say none of that matters. I'd say if we get the strategy right, we'll get rid of the tax office or we'll get rid of this creditor. It's all about strategy. I said, and they'd even say, we've got this legal argument. I said, now you're now spending 100 grand with me and other lawyers. If we keep it simple, they're going to walk away. You watch. And they would walk away and the client would be stunned. I said, it's all strategy, It's all understanding what makes government sue you, what makes people pick you, what makes somebody do a lawsuit on you, what makes you vulnerable, what will make all the difference between the government choosing to fund a lawyer to go after you and choosing to kind of leave it and reach a settlement with you. I've seen occasions where in the same situation, fellow accountants, lawyers were couldn't get a decent result with the ATO, whereas I did. And it was just not because I was better than him, but my ability to do strategy was a whole lot better as well. So asset protection plays a huge part in keeping your wealth and being sovereign in your own land, actually making this, like creating a fortress that will make sure your wealth remains safe. It's kind of like your insurance policy. And you'd have to be a very brave individual to purchase an expensive car and not have an insurance policy over the car. And yet people will have assets worth 10 times more than their car Like they'll have a house worth $1 million, they'll maybe have a business worth a couple of million or $1 million. They'll have some cash in their own name and they won't protect it because they want to save money or they can't be bothered. And it blows my mind, you know. It just means they don't really understand. Whereas they wouldn't think twice about losing a car. And I've concluded just because people don't realize how easy it is. And everyone here on this webinar, you're one day away from your whole net worth being at risk. Like you're one day away, you know, just you get on the wrong side of someone, of a government or something. And the question you would ask yourself today is, if anyone came after me, do I feel good about the way I'm structured? If the answer is, yeah, I know I'm good, great. If the answer is not sure, I think I'm okay, you'll need to get some advice and you need to master this kind of stuff. If the answer is no, I don't, then you should be moving very quickly, because once someone takes a lawsuit, it's too late. It really is. I mean, it's in theory, there are steps you can do after they do it, but they're risky and they're harder to do because there are clear laws saying preventative steps to evade your creditors can be undone, and serious cases can result in prosecution. So you really do have to make sure you do this properly. So let's take 7 basic rules of asset protection to get started with right now. So 7 basic rules. 1 is keeping wealth is just as important as making it. Now, I used to say to people, like, I would notice that simple things like a tax saving, like let's say you were making $300,000 net profit a year. Let's say that you cut 10% off your tax and you cut your tax rate down from 30 to 20%. Now, that doesn't seem a lot, but that's $30,000. So that is a real like income source into your pocket, really, just by saving taxes. Let's just say, for example, that you, so that's one really, really good example, like $30,000. Simply being able to have your assets so well structured that no one can ever get near it. I can tell you from experience that the reason why all my lawsuits end up going away pretty easily was they just didn't have anything to get off me. They just really didn't. So I felt very, very good with how well I was structured when I was doing that. So make that your rule. Like keeping your wealth is just as important when you're making it. I am so happy with everything within me right now, but the way I've structured is so robust, and I pay, you know, as Kerry Packer put it, he said, you don't want to give any unwanted donations to the government. And he said, you want your head ready if you're not minimizing your taxes, because he said no one wants to be giving the government a donation they don't deserve. And so the high net worth know this. And I'm very happy that my taxes are legally saved. And I know right now I'm not paying any more taxes than I have to. And it feels good. When I generate my income, I know that I'm paying a fair amount of tax that I feel very happy doing. And that's one of the first things of sovereignty, to be able to know how to keep your wealth, know how to really minimize your taxes and put the structure and the foundation in place, know how to really grow your wealth and make sure it's protected in good separated structures. Number 2 is own nothing, control everything. So if basically you own nothing, there's nothing to get from you. There's 2 ways. You could be a welfare child and literally be broke, or you could set up structures to make sure you separate yourself from your wealth. So if, for example, you got an asset in your own name, so as an example here, going onto a whiteboard. So if you've got an asset sitting in your own name, you can all watch my magnificent artwork. So if basically you own assets in your own name, like a house, and anyone sues you, guess what? You know, that can easily be taken because it's in your own name. If by contrast, you have a nice structure over here, you have a partner who's like not at risk of being sued, whether it's a guy or a girl, I'm just keeping it simple for now, and do that. And they effectively control the assets over here. Then anyone trying to sue you, good luck to them. It's going to be very, very hard. And then to go further, if you've got numerous multiple structures all set up, you know, like you got like business structure 1, you got business structure 2, you got investment structure all over here. So you got basically all kinds of different things going on. And, you can see therefore that you are now separated from your wealth and not there. So that's the first thing to really do and make absolutely sure that you do. So own nothing and control absolutely everything. So you do that by structuring it through entities. If you've got a partner or someone who's less risk than you or things like that, you always want to make sure that, the person who has the assets is different to the person taking the risk. So own nothing, control everything. So I always say be a penniless bum on paper. And I used to always joke when I was at seminars I would speak at. I'd say all these other speakers have taught you how to grow your business and make money. I'm here to help you to get to be a penniless bum and be broke as fuck. And people would piss themselves laughing, just because that was my opening line. I'm here to teach you to be broke. So on paper, you want to be very unattractive to be sued. You don't want to be the guy driving around or girl in a Porsche or an expensive thing and you've got all this stuff and it's all in your own name. You want to be well structured. And that leads me to the third one. If you've got a partner in your life who's not in business or less risk of being sued or is more risk of being sued and you're building your wealth together, you really want to make sure that you and that partner completely. So let's say you've got a doctor and you've got a lawyer, they're at risk of being sued. Let's say they've got a husband, like my sister's a lawyer, for example, and her husband's a stay-at-home dad. So in that situation, my sister should not be owning too much assets. Her husband should be owning more than her because he's less risk of being sued. And notice I did that deliberately just to show, it's not about the sex or gender, it's who's taking the risk. If when Grace and I were married, I was the one in business at the time taking all the risk. And so Grace was the one who was controlling things and things like that. So it's really setting up your affairs to really make sure that if you've got that, if you don't have a partner, then that's fine. There's other things you can do. But you really want to make sure that if you've got a partner who you're building your wealth and your life with, that you make sure you put each person in the correct role. Number 4 is use separate entities and structures and avoid using your own name. Like, it's so simple, but the number of times people start a new business in their own name, they buy cryptos in their own name, they buy precious metals because it's easier. And yeah, it's easier, but if you lose your money, you'll wish you hadn't taken the easy role. The easy thing for me to do is sit down at home all day on my ass and have chips and not do a lot. But doing that only made me get a bit fatter and end up with back problems and a weak body. It's never easy for me to go to Pilates and do that and do insane exercises. I'm now doing insane levels of training. I'm always threatened, but I'm seeing the results in having no back pain, excellent health after having years of other stuff. I never like going down the beach and swimming in winter. It's horrendous. I did it in this morning and the water froze my brain. It was that cold. But after I get out and then have a warm shower, I feel amazing. My whole nervous system resets. So doing the best things for you are never easy. They just aren't. And setting yourself up properly is not easy. You've got to organize. You've got to get a bookkeeper. You've got to manage your finances. You've got to manage your taxes, your debts. You've got to, all that kind of stuff. And you got to make sure that when you sign contracts in the right name, the wrong name can cost you that asset in a lawsuit. You got to make sure you get all that correctly. It's not easy, but that's why the high net worth people, they employ people to help them and stay on top of their wealth, The other one is separate your structures between their various uses. So what do I mean exactly by that? Well, essentially what I'm saying when I'm saying separate between the various uses is, for example, business. And when you've got multiple business, like you've got more than one, you certainly don't want to have them in the same structure. Like some of you know me, not just as Global Wealth Club, but I also am involved in a business called Wealth Safe. It's about setting up people in structures, in foundations and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Global Wealth's education. Do you think they're in the same structure? Not a chance. Not just because of different business partners, but even if I didn't, and at one stage I didn't, I want to make absolutely sure that if one gets sued, the other one isn't damaged. I have another business called The Awakening Within I'm involved in, which is a spiritual teaching and consciousness shifting and mindset, personal development. That's a separate structure as well. I'm involved in investment syndicate that I run with me and Connor and a couple of my sons. That's a separate structure, that business. If you buy properties, that's in a separate structure. If you're going to then get cash, gold, precious metals, you certainly want that in a separate structure. You really want to keep things separate so that if one thing gets into trouble, the others don't get affected. So that's the fifth rule of robust asset protection. The sixth one is harness the offshore world. I mean, as you start to grow your wealth into the millions and really do it, start to use the offshore world. There's really great structures you can set up overseas. You can have money overseas. You can own your gold bullion overseas. You can have an offshore nest egg. That's what I call a great reset, little protection tactic, because if the government decides to seize the gold and start grabbing money off people and you've got a nice offshore nest egg, you'll be very relieved. Whereas if all your money's in Australia because it's easier, as most people like to do, well, guess what? The great reset happens, and if they do decide to take people's gold, you've got a real problem. You saw with the vaccine mandates, most people just wanted the easy path. They took the jab to keep their job. They did the easy thing. They wore a mask because it was just too mentally tiring to push back. It's just naturally as human beings, we tend to go for the easy path. I'm challenging you not to do that. I'm not saying go to the offshore world if you haven't even got steps 1 to 5 sorted out, which I've given you. Then this is like it's a bit like trying to go out and be a professional pole dancer tomorrow without having gone through the first 5 steps. That's just a good example. And I say that example because I was out with some friends last week and I was watching in astonishment what these pole dancers can do. Like the strength, I was just going that's insane. I thought I was good for my Pilates. This is ridiculous. I was just staring in complete astonishment at how good they were. So, yeah, it's all part of a process. And very importantly, the wealthy know you surround yourself with the right team of experts. I mean, no one can know everything. I mean, those who know me in the business know I'm a terrible manager. I mean, I'm really bad. I mean, the staff love me, but they can't stand me managing them. I'm naturally a risk taker. I'm a bit creative. I'm a little bit out there, a little bit eccentric. If you haven't guessed by now, I'm in fact, as my lovely friend Jasmine says, she reckons I'm a total psychotic nutcase, but that's why she likes me, because I'm interesting, because I'm a complete psycho. And that's very nice of Jasmine to say that. And I think she's probably got some truth in that. So I know that I'm very good at risk taking, being creative, solving problems, going out there and pushing back against stupid mandates. I'm good at that. I'm not so good at that, at other stuff. I'm not so good at administrating my finances. So I've got someone who helps with that. I'm not so good at practical things. I've got mentors for that, I'm not so good at gardening. So I've got a gardener for that. And no, I'm not an Aquarian. I'm an Aries technically, So yeah. So you want the right team of experts around you. With health, I've become sovereign in my health. That doesn't mean that I don't have a good team around me. I've become sovereign with my finances. I've still got a good team. And in fact, the more wealthy you get, the more sovereign you get, the more you realize that it's a team sport, and you really don't want to be the Lone Ranger, hi-ho silver when it comes to this. You really do want to get your right team. You want to get professional advice. There's a good reason why world-class tennis players actually get the best experts around them to help them. Okay, so what assets should you protect? Well, just about everything, but really your family home most definitely, whether it's by a structure or a mortgage over your property. Investment properties, you want to make sure they're protected, especially them. I mean, tenants can sue you, governments can come after you, councils, businesses, they're very high risk of being sued for sure. So you certainly need to make sure that they're isolated and well protected. This is one that gets missed, but business goodwill and IP, let's say you've got a business worth 3 million all in the one structure and someone sues you in the business, you could lose your whole business, client list, everything. There's once happened to me years ago. Fortunately, most of the client list was separated out, but there was one I'd been a bit sloppy on and I lost it, So these things can happen. So business goodwill and IP, which means you have, even within your business, you separate certain assets. Cash is an obvious one. You want to make sure your cash, don't have a whole lot of cash in your own name, at least have a trust of some kind. Cryptocurrencies, most definitely, in a trust or foundation or overseas structure, whatever you can do. Precious metals, these are all things that it's hard to set up in the structure, but you can do it if you get the right advice and the right paperwork. Shares, other investments, yeah, pretty much all your stuff you should be making sure is well protected and using some kind of structure. Okay, final thoughts. So in summary, my concluding thing is that asset protection, and I like the word robust, is a critical part of being wealthy and preparing for the Great Reset. I mean, look, from the wealth matrix, 80 to 85% of people, like the vaccine, are not going to get through the Great Reset. They're going to be affected. Do you want to be one of those? That's the question you must ask yourself. And no doubt you'll all say yes, but actions speak louder than words. And actions to do stuff which you know you need to do will determine how serious you really are. And whatever action you take, whether it's going back to your advisor or booking in with the Global Wealth Club or talking with someone or taking your own action, whatever you need to do, it's critical to take the action that you need to take to protect your wealth and make sure that the greedy gold-digging scumbags who would like to take and reap where they haven't sown can't get near your hard-earned wealth. Think about your family, your friends, your life. How would you feel if you woke up and knew that everything was going to be lost, and because you'd chosen to live the easy path and taken a risk and hoped it would all work out and it was all too hard? No doubt you'd be feeling terrible. There'd be a lot of regret. You don't need to put yourself through that. The smart, wise man and woman takes action preventatively. As Sun Tzu said, prepare for what is difficult while it is easy. Right now, the Great Reset isn't going to happen next week. Very unlikely. Right now, there's still time to protect your assets and get yourself a robust structure. But the day that lawsuit hits, the day that tax bill comes you didn't expect, the day that sudden announcement of a reset comes which you never saw coming, as King Solomon, a wise king, once said, for man and woman do not know their time and the evil which is to come, and they tend to be like birds in a trap and they get caught because they're just not aware of the perils that lie ahead of them. So you've been warned, you've known what's possible. Let today be the day. If you haven't taken the action you need, to take the action that you need. If you have taken the action but you feel you got to fine tune it, then fine tune it. Go see your expert, or like I said, book in with the Wealth Club, and one of our guys will be very happy to help you out. So, any questions? I hope that was valuable. It's actually quite fun keeping my presentations within 35 minutes. So yeah, I did actually 33 minutes it took me today. So I'm getting shorter, everyone. I hope there's still good content value and more efficient. So questions, comments? Does anyone want to sing a song, whatever? Well, is everyone now truly enlightened? Christine, great revision. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Christine. Yeah, it's always good, isn't it, to revise things, and never can be too little to fine tune it. So Aidan, short and sweet works well. I couldn't agree more. Nate, will there be a replay available, Mr.? Yep, there's always a replay that goes on YouTube within a day or two, Nate. So all good. You can see the replay. I think it'll be either tomorrow or the day after. It depends. It gets edited and put up there. Any other questions or comments? Doesn't look like there is. There is one question about the tax office of corporation in America and isn't really a government department, from Lisa. Well, there's theoretical stuff and there's there's stuff you can practically use. Do I think that's probably the truth? Well, yes, it is. I've looked into it, seen letters, and no question that the tax office technically in many ways is not a legal entity. If you want to be the brave one to go into court and take this on, I know people who've tried it and it hasn't really got very far. It's going to require a major recognition on a fairly major scale before a lot can be done about that. That's my take on that, Lisa, even though I do think that is technically correct. Hagrid says trusts and foundations. I don't quite know what you mean by that, but if you're saying that trusts and foundations are really good, then yeah, I would agree with you, Hagrid. Louise, very grateful. Thank you. Okay, so next week, we'll be covering the next part, which is where we're going to be going to robust income streams and looking at ways to start creating what I call great reset and income streams and investing in a balanced portfolio. Stephanie says, thank you, great points. We'll need a book session, one into experts. Yeah, absolutely, Stephanie. Always better to do it quicker than later. So I always believe act now if you know you've got to do something rather than wait. So in terms of next week, by all means, come along and we'll be covering that one next. There's a question about explaining second mortgage. What I'm going to direct you to, Pat, is I'm going to kind of, rather than do that, I'm going to direct you to the Global Wealth Club. If you go to our website and go into our education, you'll see a thing called free trainings. If you click on the free trainings, you will find there's a really good set of basic videos that explains that for you. And they're very short, they're very to the point, and everyone says they're wonderfully easy to follow. So if you go into the protect your assets and minimize your taxes, you will see there's a specific one on property protection. If you click on that one, there's also asset protection principles. You will see there's a really good one on second mortgages in here. So you can see it all here. It's all there. And they're only 7-minute videos, so you'll find that they're done pretty quickly. But yeah, we don't have time to go into that today, but hopefully that will find that very, very valuable. Dorothy, thanks, Warren. Great summary and revision. Oh, my pleasure, Dorothy. So Louise, for internet-based businesses, are we doomed? Not necessarily. It depends on the situation and what you're doing. The other quick thing I might mention for everyone, just on the videos, is if you go into, so foundations, if you're interested to know more about that and asset protection, we do have a series of simple videos here and simple videos of tax minimizations here. So yeah, they're all deliberately done because our survey of you as members and participants show people like short videos, as a rule, rather than long ones. So we've really been working to break all our videos up into much shorter, more succinct videos. So hopefully you'll find them. We'll always welcome your feedback back so we can continue to improve the education and the content we're giving. And of course, go to our YouTube channel and get the word out to your friends, and let's see if we can minimize this great reset and help more and more people become sovereign in your own land. So thank you everyone for attending, and I look forward to seeing all of you next week. Bye for now.